Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Hello/X/. I am here to tell you a story. It's a personal story about the paranormal, and it might seem bloggy at times, but this is something that has been on my mind lately, and I wish to share it with you. I have posted this story before, so maybe some of you may remember it. Anyways, all of these events happened in the Dominican Republic. This story is about a local celebrity's disappearance at sea and my estranged grandfather's encounter with those who rescued him, and what they told him of the future. In 1959, a local radio commentator, Freddy Miller, set sail from the capital to a local beach, a warm, sunny day with perfect weather and a majestic beach in sight. There were 5 people on that boat. None of them were ever seen again. They were simply lost at sea. A strange occurrence, certainly, but one that could be explained. Our at the time dictator, Rafael Trujillo, could have easily dispatched some of his secret police to deal with him after all. What perfect place other than the sea to dump some bodies? I don't know exactly if Miller ever spoke against Trujillo. He, like any other dictator, was not against killing people who spoke ill of him. This was near the end of Trujillo's rule. He got offed on 1961 by some freedom fighters. Rumor has it they were backed by the CIA, but that's another story for another day. Anyways, for many people that was it. Commentator pisses off dictator and ends up dead. Not exactly shocking. Or alternatively, they got Bermuda triangled by the sea, or a kraken ate them, or whatever. Not many records of the event, except that people obviously searched for them but were never found. And the story faded into obscurity. 13 years later, this is when things get weird. 1972, my grandfather, Virgilio Gomez, an insurance salesman, was driving from the capital to a nearby town to, well, sell insurance. This was early morning. And imagine what the highways of a developing nation in the Caribbean probably looked like in the 70s. Shitty, desolate roads with a forest of palm trees on either side of the road. So my grandfather spots a man on the side of the road. Hitchhiker? Screw that, he ain't got no time for this sucker. He can walk home. Except as he got closer, he noticed this man was wearing a full green jumpsuit, which obviously caught my grandpa's attention, enough to make him slow down to greet him. And so he did. He also noticed 2 more guys with the same jumpsuit farther away, amidst the trees. Why he didn't immediately leave at this moment, I don't know. I know I would have. So as the guy gets closer to the car, my grandpa takes a good look at the guy. And this is how he described him. Green-yellowish skin tone, full-body green jumpsuit, no hair and some sort of wristwatch device thingy. Obviously startled, my grandpa asked for the guy's name. This shit is so ridiculous/X/ I'm gonna Greentext their conversation. Who the fuck are you? Don't you recognize me? No, I'm Freddy Miller. I drowned at sea, but I was rescued by them in a flying machine. What, like a helicopter? Not really, I guess you could call it a UFO. At this point, my grandpa thinks this guy is just screwing with him, so he plays along. So did you walk all the way here from Venus? No, I was rescued because of my knowledge of radio communications devices. The others weren't so lucky. My grandpa, what the fuck's hard, and looks at the other dudes. 6 feet tall, gray men. Shit, man, why didn't you run? Okay, what the fuck is going on? We are here investigating. Investigating what? The Milwaukee Deep. There's going to be a large earthquake that will heavily affect the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, and Haiti. But we are here to prevent that. Now please, move along. So after this, he goes to local newspaper and delivers them story. For a time, he became a local celebrity as people were amazed by the tale. People flocked to their house to hear about the aliens. Apparently even UFO groups from the US came to cover the story. Even Jeanette Miller, Freddie's daughter, now grown up, comes to listen to story, although apparently she didn't believe it. My grandpa was not a nice man. He cheated on my grandmother. He used to beat up my mom and was an alcoholic. He later left my grandma for some other woman and started another family. Overall, he was a douchebag, and rightly so. Nobody in the family actually believed him. But he always swore that it was all true. He never went back on his word. He claimed he had really met these aliens. I must have seen my grandpa like maybe 2 times in my life when I was real young before I heard the story. I first heard the story when I was around 15, and I went on the internet and found all these sites talking about it. Obviously, to me it was exciting. Imagine how you would feel if your grandfather met aliens. Cool shit, huh? Unfortunately, that's all I have. Internet articles. I always wanted to meet with him and talk about it. My parents tell me he was excited when I was born, first son of his oldest daughter, and that he always made plans to actually hang out with me and stuff. But he never did. He passed away last year. I didn't cry. I didn't really feel anything. I went to his funeral and I didn't even want to see the body. My grandma has Alzheimer's, so I can't actually ask her about anything. The reason I'm posting this is because, I don't know really, as I said, I had already posted the story before, but never this detailed. Earlier today I was on the subject talking about my grandma's Alzheimer's situation with my mom and asked if he developed Alzheimer's as well before he died. Apparently he didn't. And even to his deathbed, he kept saying the story was true. That's when it hit me. Now I will never be able to ask him about Freddy Miller, about the UFO, about the Milwaukee Deep. It will forever remain an unanswered question in my life. Every night, I watch the skies. Maybe somewhere out there there's a group of green jumpsuit wearing aliens and they're watching over us.
Hey/X/, have any of you guys ever recorded, whether it be sound or video, of any paranormal shit? If so, you should post it in this thread and share your stories along with it. I don't have my only recording because it's on a tape and it's at my mom's house a few hours away since I recorded it when I was a child. But here's the story. B12. 2 little brothers and I are into ghosts and paranormal shit and ghost hunting. We used to take this tape recorder and go sit in our garage at midnight in the cold and dark and ask questions while the tape recorder recorded shit. We never were able to pick anything up, except sometimes we would quietly whisper to freak each other out as a joke. I decided to start putting the tape recorder in my room and let it record while I slept. My older brother usually slept in my room since we had a bunk bed, but he was in Florida with my grandma for a month, so I got to sleep on the bottom bunk. First few nights, nothing on recording, although before falling asleep, I would always remember being able to smell this disgusting dead human corpse smell like it was rotting. I didn't really know though, and figured it was the sewer outside or something. Sometimes you could smell it. On the 5th night of recording, I couldn't sleep, and the smell was pissing me off. It was about 1 a.m. I always slept with the door closed all the way. I had a nightlight that dimly lit my room because I was a giant wuss. I lay in bed, thinking about music, rolling around and humming songs to myself when I heard some quick tapping on wood, like someone accidentally hit their fingers on the door. I look over behind me and to the right. My door was right next to me, but my bunk bed was pointed in the opposite direction of the door. It was opened from being closed, but just a tiny, tiny crack. It wasn't opened enough for me to see out yet. I was kind of scared and figured it was my mom finally going to sleep. My mom had worked that night at the spa at the Peppermill, shitty Reno casino. I get kind of scared, and I'm too afraid of getting up and closing the door. I was always afraid of monsters under my bed grabbing my ankles. I looked at the tape recorder next to my bed, which was on a stand next to the door, and it was still recording. Then I looked back at the door, just as it was done opening a bit more. It was about a quarter opened at a 45-degree angle, I suppose. Pee my pajamas and yell at my brother to stop and to go to bed, or I'll call Mom and he'll get in trouble. No reply. I hid under the blanket like I normally do, and said this thing my music teacher taught me to make ghosts go away, where you would say in a strong and confident voice, "When I count to 3, you must be gone. 1, 2, 3. Then you would keep doing it until you felt safe. Didn't work. Take the blanket off my head to find the door almost all the way open, and I saw something above it moving. I slowly inched my sight upwards until I saw it. First I saw the giant see-through shadowy hand gripped on the door as if they were opening the door. Then I didn't see an arm, but some shadowy outline of a body. Then the part that struck me. I will never forget it to this day, and I'm 19 now. I slowly looked and saw its terrible, plain and emotionless, pale and shadowy face with no expression, staring at me with giant eyes and no emotion. It was bald, too. Its other hand was on the frame of my wall to pull itself into my room. I couldn't move, and all I could think about was my mom, the putrid smell and my blanket. After a minute, it started mumbling things, and then it escalated into a loud growl. I could feel it vibrating in my entire body. My stomach was squeezing as tight as it could into my toes. I then came back to consciousness and jumped under my blanket and screamed and screamed. My little brothers rushed in and yelled and turned the lights on. I felt the biggest relief I ever felt in my childhood, and the smell slowly dissipated. "Dude, did you fart? Jeez," my little brother says to me as I can't even seem to gather what just happened. I ask them to sleep on my floor, and they do, and I fall asleep instantly. We also got like 2 more night lights. Fast forward the next day after school, my little brothers and I get the tape and rewind it to listen to the whole thing. Skip through the stupid bullshit we accidentally recorded onto it throughout the day, then get to when I went to bed. Slowly fast forward and play, and we stop once we start hearing me tell the ghost to go away. Rewind a bit and wait until we hear the doorknob rattling and turning very quietly. Usually it's loud as hell no matter how gently you turn it. Can hear a bit of the sound from the rest of the house break through into my room. You can hear some fans in the other room very quietly. As we hear me rolling to the tape recorder and dicking around with it, we hear the door open some more, letting more sound in. We hear nothing, which I recall as me staring at the door in fear. Then we hear me yelling at my brothers. Immediately after that, you hear a very subtle, guttural growl, slowly building up. We hear me telling the ghost to leave, hear me rolling around in bed and cowering. We hear blankets rustling, then silence. Me staring at the door, I recall, and breathing heavily. We can hear the guttural growl getting louder and louder, and you can hear some items in my room vibrating and rattling. Among the growling, we hear terrifying mumbling. A very deep male voice just talking at insane speeds. No idea what they say. Then we hear me screaming and my brothers rushing in. After that, I started having night terrors for a week afterwards. Literally didn't sleep for days on end. I'll never forget this shit.
I want to share some stories with you. I have just a few that happened to me and a bunch of other ones that happened to people that I've known. I would also like you to share stories like this if you have any. Let me tell you beforehand that I don't officially believe in these things, but I found the whole phenomena fascinating. Most of the things shared in this board, in my opinion, are utterly laughable with the few interesting exceptions. I am Mexican and all of this happened in Mexico. I'm in my mid-20s, just so you have an idea of the surroundings. First story, it happened to one of my co-workers. Co-worker 10 years ago in his mid-20s, starting to live with an older woman and her child. Living in a rented house, small place with just a kitchen, bathroom, and living room, using the living room to sleep, and a small corridor to the outside door. Not so long after starting living there, he starts to hear a spoon hitting an empty plate, as if someone was eating. Noise persists. He goes to the kitchen and dinner room to see. Nothing there. Same noise is heard only by him from time to time. He stops giving it any importance. One night, both hear a pick-related, don't know the name in English, getting smashed to the ground. He immediately goes to the kitchen to see if someone somehow got in there. No one is there. No way for anyone to get inside. Pick-related is intact. They could not sleep that night. Time passes and some spoon noises are heard. Sometimes a chair is also heard as if it was pulled to sit. They try their best to ignore it. Another night they are both asleep. He suddenly feels a hand wrapping his arm. He is pulled from bed. She wakes up and asks him where he is going. He says, "Me 11. I'm being carried away." He describes this sensation as an adult who wraps a child with his hands and pushes him forward. He felt powerless against the push, and he felt a chill in his spine the whole time. He is being moved through the corridor. She quickly turns on the light. He stops being moved immediately. They take the child and leave the place. The next day he talks to his brother, a priest. My co-worker is a computer engineer. He is not really much into religion, but like most people here, they were all raised Catholic. He reaches the conclusion that whatever was there doesn't want him to be in that place. He recommends him to place a veladora, candle, to give light to it, since according to him that thing needed light. The first night, the candle is consumed in just a couple of hours. The second candle lasts a bit longer. The third candle lasts half a day, and so on until the seventh candle that lasted a day or more. Nothing strange happened during the time that the candles were lit, and nothing strange happened after they did. The house is calm from then on. Giving light to beings that are trapped here so that they can rest is a common belief in Mexico. I will keep writing stories as I remember them. This happened to me when I was about 13, or actually happened around me, be me asleep. Mother wakes me up, asks me if I put the Angel de la Guardia, guardian angel, portrait on the floor. Tell her I don't know what she is talking about as I turn to the wall and see that it is not there. The portrait is on the floor reclined to the wall. The portrait is framed in metal and crystal, so it's impossible for it to fall without making a heavy noise and scattering crystal around. Mother mentions that I might have done it asleep. Yeah, sure. I have never sleepwalked or done anything like that. My parents later reached the conclusion that something wanted to do something to me and the angel protected me. Maybe my parents were trying to get me close to church since at that age I started to express aversion to all religious things. This happened to my grandmother and her sister, stepsister, in the mid-1940s. She was around 15, so was her sister. My great-grandfather's family were very prominent landowners in rural Mexico. They lived in one of those old-time haciendas and had several workers. Grandmother. Mother died. Father remarried. Stepmother dislikes her for some reason. Stepmother always makes her do all chores and never her or her sister. Every morning has to wake up before the sun rises to prepare the food for the workers. Her father is always supervising the workers and comes back to the house at noon to take the food to the workers. One morning, her father returned to the house not long after he left because of reasons. Finds her at the open corridor torteando, making tortillas, alone. Asks her where her sister is and why she is doing it all by herself. She tells him that she always does it alone and her stepmother and sister never help. He goes inside furious. We can assume that he had a small talk with her stepmother and sister. He says that her sister is going to help her from now on and leaves. Sister comes out uber pissed, yelling vulgarities at her and overall rudeness. Grandmother tells her that she doesn't have to help if she doesn't want to since she is used to doing all the work. Sister refuses and stays still saying vulgarities. Suddenly there is absolute silence, not even wind or roosters. Then they hear as a horse approaches, and as the sound gets louder, the animals go crazy doing their growls. As soon as the horse is visible on the street, they feel the sudden urge to run inside the house. They hide under a table in the kitchen. They hear as the figure walks inside the house and gets to where they are in the kitchen. The figure is visible up to the shoulders, they cannot see its face. The figure walks around the table 3 times and then leaves. All animals are still making their sounds. Sister tries to speak, but goes mute. They stay under the table until the sun rises and the stepmother comes out. Her mother yells at them and demands an explanation for not doing their chores and being under the table. Sister tries to explain but stutters and is not able to complete a sentence. Grandmother explains to stepmother. She doesn't believe it since she was in one of the rooms awake the whole time. Sister recovers her speech gradually, but still stutters a bit up to this day. My grandmother's reasoning was that El Diablo, the devil, came to teach her sister a lesson for being loud-mouthed and vulgar. She describes the figure kind of like a mariachi dress, but with all of the metallic things made of very shining silver. The figure stood at about 2 meters tall and was very elegant, although she was terrified, and the only thing in her mind was that the devil had come for them. Rural Mexico was and still is raised with irrational fears, so in that age I would probably have assumed that it was the devil too. All this happened in the house of a friend. I have frequented that place ever since 2005 when we met in middle school. His family owns a lot of houses and land across Mexico. This house was pretty much abandoned, and they decided to stay there since it was the biggest they had in the city. In the beginning, it was him and his dad, and since his dad never had a real job, he had to work as a security guard, which means that we had the place all by ourselves almost all the time. And I loved the place since we could play loud music, scream, and throw things all we wanted, since it was pretty much empty. Be me, first time at his house. Big dusty place, start realizing potential. We went to his room on the 2nd floor. I feel a hard chill on my spine as we go through the corridor. Whatever mentality. Nothing happens to me, but up to this day I feel chills in my back when passing that corridor during nighttime. Fast forward 1 year or 2. We are used to playing video games up to 3 or 4 in the morning. He usually walks me midway to my house since at that time it wasn't that good of a neighborhood. One night when we finished playing, he turned off everything, and as we walked outside his room, I see a silhouette like hair standing outside of his window. He had no curtains or even actual windows at that time, just metal protection. I stare several seconds until he comes inside and asks me what I'm doing there. I say nothing and leave. As we walk on the street, I ask him if he has a mop outside of his window. He laughs and says no and asks why. There is no actual floor, just concrete. Don't bring it up until a couple of years later when I overheard his brother talking about these things. Younger brother of my friend moves in. At some point, hear him say that he thought he heard noises last night, but his father would not say anything about it. Friend says that his father doesn't like to talk about those things. Later ask friend what he was referring to. Friend says that he and his father heard something like the mop hit the floor in the kitchen. Both wake up and go, but there is nothing on the floor. Friend sleeps with a knife just in case. I laugh. He shows me a big butcher knife. I laugh harder. Remember the mop incident and tell him that I thought I saw a mop that day when I asked him if he had one, but it was probably an old lady standing outside. I connect both incidents and start to kind of like wanting to scare him with the old lady haunting his house. He just brushed it off. I randomly mention the lady maybe 5 or 10 times a year since then. Friend has his first girlfriend who comes from a broken home. She gets kicked out and goes to live with him. This was around 2008. I didn't get along with her since I saw her as the girl that was ruining our friendship. He was her boyfriend first and then my friend. She told me the following last month as we started talking about this subject. She lives there again, but now she pays rent with her new BF. Friend, his GF, and his brother are in the kitchen. She is using the sink next to the window looking to the backyard. She overlooks a lady and looks at her for a couple of seconds, then turns to tell them to look outside. Turns back and there is nothing. She says that she saw a lady out there. Friend and brother start laughing and say that it was probably Dona Pancha. At this point, I didn't talk to her and never mentioned the lady in front of her. My friend and his brother called her Dona Pancha as a joke. I just recently started calling her like that before I just said the lady. She is scared. Guys are laughing since they assume I told her about it. This happened last month in the house and is the reason we started to talk about these things. Be me at the house about to leave. Now it is just my friend, his cousin with his wife and child, and his ex-GF with her BF paying rent. Be standing in the living room waiting for my friend to leave. I glance at the washing room and see a female silhouette, dress and long hair. It moved from the small corridor which gives visibility all the way to the backyard to the washing room. It looked kind of like grayish-white in the dark, and I saw some clothing moving when she moved inside. I stand there for a couple of seconds waiting for her to come out since it was dark and there was no reason to stay there. At that moment, I thought I saw the wife of the cousin. Ask friend's cousin if his wife is in there. He says jokingly that is El Diablo, the devil. I say that I'm serious and he says he is as well. I think fuck it, I'm going to see. I walk over there saying, "Are you there, Diablo? Why don't you salute jokingly as well?" They throw an empty bottle trying to scare me. I have no reaction. I return through the same path and say he wasn't there. I still think it's his wife and went through the other path in the backyard. I say, "Let's go then." We leave. Now his cousin decides to come. As we walk, he says that he's going to pick up his wife at some cooking school. I interject and say that it was her wife who I saw there. The cousin says that it was not. Friend says that it was Dona Pancha. We laugh, but I know what I saw. Next day, cousin's wife and ex-GF are there. I say that I saw her, but it wasn't her. She says, "Who was it then?" Friend says that I saw Dona Pancha. Ex-GF says that last night when she got there, not so long after we left, the dog, they have a boxer, was in the backyard and then suddenly came running inside, agitated and trembling. We say that it was definitely her. Ex-GF says that not so long after she and her new BF, moved in, she had just laid in bed when she felt someone walking on the mattress. She starts recalling her previous experience in the backyard, which I didn't know until then. Cousin's wife says that she might have seen a lady from the living room as it was turning towards the corridor. Friend says that his brother saw a little girl playing between the corridor and the stairs from the living room. Friend's cousin says that his son told him that someone was playing with his toys and he didn't want him to play with them, but the kid just referred to it as it, no gender or age. We come to the conclusion that the place is haunted. We start to joke about the whole thing. We then started to talk about experiences again. XGF says that her BF friend and brother were playing video games in the living room. They start to hear noises coming from another room. BF freezes, friend and brother keep playing. BF stands up and turns on the light, noises stop, friend and brother are laughing at him. Ask friend and he says it's true but meh. Ask XGF why is her BF such a wuss. She says that he had an experience growing up and got traumatized. This is the moment to tell, so I ask her to do it. The 15-year-old BF living with my parents and 3 brothers in a small one-room house. Everyone sleeps in the same room. One day some friends of his older brother stayed at the house. Shitty one-room house, as mentioned, everyone crammed in the place. Late at night, everyone is awakened by a scream. A little girl is standing in the middle of the room. Everyone sees her. They quickly turn on the light, and the little girl disappears. Everyone is scared shitless, including the parents. One of the friends loses speech due to the impression. XGFBF has been traumatized ever since. I don't blame him. Such thing must leave a hard impression on oneself. I ask the XGF if she has any stories. It turns out she is from a very occultist region. I don't remember the name. She grew up with several experiences of this kind, but I will tell the one that she says that caused the biggest impression on her. When she was 10 years old, she was living in said place with parents. She sleeps with her mother. Father usually comes very late from work. One night she could not sleep. Tried to close her eyes, but every time she felt something is watching her. She is more scared to tell her mother since she knows she will nag her if she awakens her. This goes on for some time until she could not open her eyes. She has chills and feels that whatever is watching her is in front of her. Finally opens her eyes, sits and sees a pair of dark red eyes staring at her. She describes the sensation of the eyes as being darker than the room, like it dragged the light. She is scared but cannot yell. Fear is bigger than bothering her mother and trying to pinch her awake. Finally, her mother awakens, very annoyed, and starts to yell at her and turns on the lights. She doesn't care and is finally happy that it is over. She says that she didn't told her mother what she saw until several years later. Her mother started to cry and apologized for behaving like that and said that she was aware that there was something in that place, but she obviously was not going to discuss it with a child. It feels lonely here, guys. Is anyone lurking? Be like 6 or 7. Have a cousin of the same age, be at one of our cousin's birthday party. Cousin of my age starts calling me names. I start calling him names back. We all start calling names to each other until my grandmother hears us and says that we should stop, or El Diablo is going to pull our legs during the night. We jokingly said that we don't believe in those things later, not in front of our grandmother, but we stopped doing it anyway. Cousin about my age doesn't stop and keeps calling me names. I don't care. Night comes. We play random stuff up until midnight. We start to play hide and seek. I hide fairly close to the base. The cousin about my age and an older cousin hid in the small garden. I save myself. Older cousin saves himself. The cousin who was seeking was standing not even a meter away from the base when the cousin about my age came running from the garden. He grabs hold of the base before the seeking cousin could even react. Cousin about my age is breathing heavily but doesn't say anything. We are all impressed at the speed he ran. One cousin looks him in the face and asks him what is wrong. He tries to speak but stutters. We could not understand anything. Older cousin went to the place they were hiding and there was nothing. Another of my cousins took the cousin about my age inside. Then not even 10 minutes later, we are all leaving. Me and other cousins want to stay to play. We are all ignored and we left. Later I found out he was standing behind the garden and then he heard laughter behind him. He turned back and saw a pair of very red eyes staring at him. He stood frozen for a second and then ran as fast as he could. The cousin that he was hiding with told him to come with him, but he says that didn't hear him. He describes his experience as watching the eyes of the devil.
OC story, Grandma is proof of Kundalini energy and its effects on the body. B, from a small city in South America, Grandma is a bruja. Not witch, as in English folklore, more like a person that handles a kind of magic. She always had paranormal sensitivity since childhood. When she grew up, she took some courses to sort of handle it and put an use to it, like healing. Anyways, at some point in her adulthood, she starts craving absurd amounts of water, like, I'm gonna die if I don't drink gallons of it. Not to mention spending the day urinating. Goes to a local doctor, they have absolutely no idea, so she gets sent to the capital of the country to see specialists. There's a wonky-ass coincidence with the doctor involved there, but that's another story. Turns out she has a rare condition called diabetes insipidus, where the pituitary is producing too little of a hormone that regulates thirst. Caused by damage to the pituitary, tumors, anything that affects the gland. All tests come back negative. The pituitary is completely normal. Doctor tags it as a genetic issue or a super small damage or stroke and gives pills to take for life, no cure for it. Grandma has been taking those for decades since I was a kid. She always worked on healing herself for years. Recently, the thirst went away, she dropped the medication. Doc asks for blood work. It's completely normal. Doc is baffled since it's the first time he sees someone cured from that condition out of the blue. We were discussing it the other day, and Dad mentioned that the courses Grandma took to handle her powers included work with Kundalini energy. She started having issues after these courses. There's a high chance that while working with it, the Kundalini snake damaged her third eye chakra, causing a real-life condition. Decades of energy work managed to heal it. She also healed herself from psoriasis. Wonky woman.
Be me. I'd always liked walking at night. Sometimes I'd just get a mood or a feeling and I'd know I'd have to head out. I eventually took to bringing along this staff I'd made with me, wore a cloak, mostly for the fun of it. I half-jokingly started looking around my hillside town for gnomes or earth elementals, not really having any idea how to go about that. This really led nowhere except one time that I was walking on the outskirts of one of the fancier McMansion neighborhoods. One of the houses on a hill had some kind of disco light on their back porch. Although I didn't realize it until later, this was projecting lights onto the hillside near to me. You come to it right after getting out of a tunnel. Of course, I had no idea about the disco light, and all I could tell was happening at first was that dozens of strange orbs of light were cascading down this grassy hillside in the dead of night towards me. I bolted, and it took me a good second of running to realize it was just a disco light on a rich dude's porch. This part has no bearing on the story, but maybe goes to say that I'm a bit of a searcher, and maybe more than willing to believe that there are uncanny forces at work in the world. Take the rest of this with more than a grain of salt. A little after that last excursion, maybe a half a year or so, I'd moved out to Tucson. I was crazy bored most of the time when I first moved out. I hadn't yet met many people, and I didn't know the town very well yet. I kept up with my night walks. Staffless, unfortunately, had to leave that in the move. One night I was taking a walk in one of the washes near downtown. They can be a little sketchy, especially in the dark, but mostly because of homeless camps, and they usually won't fuck with you if you're not fucking with them. On occasion, the odd coyote or javelina, shit like that. Anyway, I was strolling along in the basin part of the wash, kinda close to one of the concrete sides. I started coming up on some kind of drainage tunnel, and there was a faint light pouring out from inside. I figured maybe someone was camped out in there, but as I got closer, I started hearing this really odd sound. The best way I could describe it is like a sweep of the harmonic series, like the overtones, but very fast, going up real high, then shooting back down and going up again. Weird vibes started getting this really odd feeling. Debated with myself whether or not to even check it out, but I eventually worked up enough courage to check out this drainage tube. Tried to walk over as quietly as I could. The closer I got, the more piercing this tone got. It was like I could feel it throughout my whole body and mind. Peered around the edge of the tunnel. I couldn't see that far in, but there was a faint light somewhere further back. I took a small stone from by the entrance and threw it in, and I was met with the sound growing even more piercing, giving me this horrible pain behind my eyes, almost like a migraine. I think I blacked out after a couple of seconds of that. I'm not totally sure how long I was out. When I came to, I was just a little further from the entrance to the tunnel. The light and sound were gone, and I had 2 small sticks laid over my chest in an X shape. Got the fuck out of there after that. I've avoided that spot ever since. Not really sure what the fuck was going on there, but I'm not super interested in finding out.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.